But the one thing bushcrafters, preppers, survivalists all have in common is they really love paracord. And so we're always trying to find ways of getting more paracord into our kit, whether we're making stupid bracelets or putting it around sheaths or around axe handles and things like that. One really obvious thing to do is to use paracord on your boots. Replace your existing bootlaces with paracord. It sounds logical in principle. A bootlace is going to be more fragile than a piece of paracord. It's probably going to hold more water than paracord because it's a cheaper, thinner material. Paracord, of course, has endless amounts of uses, and so it would be logical to replace your boots with paracord. But I did hear a few people complain when they replaced their boots laces with paracord that it gave them problems. So I decided about 3 years ago to do an experiment. What I did was I replaced one boot with paracord, this one, and I just left this one with the ordinary bootlace because I knew I would have these boots for a good few years, and I just wanted to see, is there actually any advantage or disadvantage to doing that. Obviously I'd never found myself in a situation where I was depending solely on my bootlace, in which case I might have appreciated having a bit of paracord as opposed to a more flimsy bootlace. But the reality is, if you're at the point of survival where you're taking your laces out of your boots to make a bow drill or something, it's probably the least of your worries. Just how reinforced your bootlace are. And I would say that after 3 years of wearing these boots over hundreds of miles, I would absolutely not recommend using paracord as a bootlace. And I'll tell you why. Because, one, from a purely practical point of view, in terms of, like, people would say, oh well, it doesn't hold as much water, so what? Yeah, I think the ordinary bootlace does stay wetter longer, so it doesn't add much more weight, doesn't really matter. It's more prone to rot, an ordinary bootlace, than paracord. Yeah, probably, but you can see these boots are 4 years old, and for 3 years I've had the paracord on this boot and the original lace on this boot. It's still just as strong, probably, as it was when I purchased the boots, and, you know, it makes no difference. It's not that much of a problem with rot. Maybe if you were in the jungle for an extended period of time you would pay more attention to that, but in reality I would just take a couple of extra spare bootlaces with me anyway. But here's the real reason I don't recommend doing it. And my next pair of boots, I'm retiring these boots, my next pair of boots I won't be replacing the bootlaces, is one, because I tend to find that when these are laced up, and I laced them up at the same sort of tightness, but when these are fully laced up, I get pinching. Right around here, I get pinching on my foot, and if you're doing a particularly long walk or a hike, that actually becomes a bit of a real hotspot, and it's quite painful. And I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. I suspect it's probably just the paracord just hasn't got as much give as the bootlace. It just doesn't stretch as much, so it's not as forgiving when you're moving around. So it pinches the top of your foot there. Now, you could maybe sort of adjust it in such a way that that didn't happen, and you'd think, well, that's no big deal. But the other main reason, and this is not anecdotal evidence, this is 3 years of wearing these boots, 100% know this to be true. Paracord laces come undone way more than an ordinary pair of laces. I suspect it's probably because paracord has got a very sleek jacket, you know. It's got the 7-core centre, and it has a nylon jacket that goes over that, and it's kind of sleek, you know. It's a lot more slidey than a bootlace, which is, you know, rougher. It has a little bit more, you know, grip to it. I've done multi-day 100-mile journeys with these boots, and the last time I did an extended hike with these boots, at least 3 times a day, this bootlace would come undone. This one never came undone. Never. I laced them exactly the same way, I tie them the exact same way. It got to the point where I was adding an extra knot to this boot, but not this boot, just to try and hold back this one from coming undone, which just gets annoying after a while. So, in my opinion, I would not use Paracord for your boots. Just keep your original bootlaces and carry an extra couple of pairs of bootlaces in your kit with you, because if you break a bootlace when you're out somewhere in the wilderness, there's only so many times you can tie them back together before it becomes a real pain in the arse.